The sun was setting over a dusty farm, casting long shadows across the vast golden fields. In the distance, an old farmer leaned on his rusted fence, watching the world change around him. He had worked the land his whole life, his hands rough from years of labor, his back bent from the weight of hard work. Life hadn't been kind, but he'd never complained. After all, he didn't have much, but he had his farm and his simple, peaceful life. Or so he thought. One day, everything changed. A slick, well-dressed millionaire rolled into town, his sleek black car kicking up the dirt behind it as he made his way to the old farmer's property. The millionaire had a reputation, ruthless, cold, and always looking for his next big investment. He was interested in one thing, a horse. Not just any horse, but a rare, majestic creature the old farmer had raised from a foal. The horse was his pride, a symbol of everything he had worked for. But to the millionaire, it was nothing more than a commodity, something to be bought and sold for profit. He had plans, big plans, and he'd stop at nothing to get what he wanted. With a smooth, practiced smile, the millionaire made an offer the old farmer couldn't refuse. He tossed a large sum of money on the table, far more than the old farmer had ever seen in his life. But the farmer wasn't willing to part with his horse. The creature had become more than just an animal, it was family. Yet, the millionaire wasn't used to hearing no, and soon it became clear that the deal wasn't just about money. He would do whatever it took to get the horse in his hands. But the farmer was not without his own cleverness. He knew how to make a deal, how to read people, and when it came to something he loved, he wasn't about to let go without a fight. What happened next stunned both men. What the millionaire didn't realize was that this wasn't just a sale. It was the start of something far bigger, something that would turn the tables in a way no one saw coming. Against all odds, the old farmer bought the horse from the millionaire. But that wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. What the millionaire failed to see, what he couldn't even begin to understand, was that this horse was no ordinary animal. It possessed a secret, a power that could change everything. The farmer, once just a humble man, would soon find himself on a path that led to unimaginable wealth. And just like that, he went from a simple, struggling farmer to something far more. But as the old man took his first steps into his new life, little did he know, the millionaire wasn't done. The story was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. How would the farmer use his newfound wealth? And what exactly did this horse have to do with it all? The old farmer couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. As he walked back to his small, weathered farmhouse, the weight of the horse's presence was heavy in the air, almost as if the animal knew something he didn't. The creature's eyes, wide and intelligent, seemed to hold secrets that went far beyond the simple world the farmer had known for so long. It wasn't just the horse's beauty, it was something else, something deeper. But what? The millionaire's offer had been too tempting for most, and many would have taken the money without a second thought. But not the farmer. He didn't trust the millionaire, or his cold, calculating smile. He had lived through enough hardships to know when something didn't feel right. The way the millionaire had pushed, the way he had seemed to believe the horse was already his, it had unsettled the old man. And now, he was left wondering why he'd even agreed to sell the horse in the first place. But there was no going back now. He had the animal, and whatever its secrets were, he was about to discover them. For the first few days, everything seemed ordinary. The horse roamed the fields, grazing peacefully, as if nothing had changed. Yet the farmer couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Every time he stepped outside, the air felt charged, as though something unseen was lurking just beyond the edges of his vision. He couldn't explain it, but it was there, gnawing at him. Then came the strange occurrences. At night, when the stars were high in the sky and the world was quiet, the horse would wander to the farthest corner of the field, its hooves digging into the soft earth. It wasn't just the movement that was unsettling, it was the way the animal seemed to be communicating with something in the distance. The farmer often heard low, guttural noises, like a distant rumble, coming from the woods near the edge of the property. But when he went to investigate, there was nothing there, just the soft whisper of the wind. And it wasn't just the horse. The farm itself began to feel. The crops, once stubborn and slow to grow, flourished almost overnight. The soil, which had been tired and worn, seemed to come alive with an energy the farmer had never seen before. It was as if the land itself was reacting to the presence of the horse, growing richer, more vibrant, almost magical. But even with all the change around him, the old farmer couldn't shake the feeling that there was something he was missing. The horse wasn't just a horse. It couldn't be. There had to be more to it, something hidden beneath the surface. Then one night, something happened that would change everything. The farmer woke to a strange noise outside his window, a soft tapping against the glass. He got up, his heart racing, and peered into the darkness. There, in the moonlight, he saw the horse standing perfectly still, its gaze fixed on the horizon. But it wasn't alone. In the distance, at the edge of the woods, two figures stood watching him. They were cloaked, their faces hidden in shadow, but the farmer could feel their eyes on him. One of them raised a hand, as if to gesture toward him. The old man's heart thudded in his chest. He wasn't sure who they were or why they were there, but he knew this was only the beginning. The horse had brought more than just fortune to the old farmer. It had brought danger, and whoever those figures were, they were connected to the mysteries he had yet to uncover. Now, with the tension rising and the stakes higher than ever, he had to decide, would he embrace the power that had come with the horse, or would he be consumed by it? As the figures moved closer, their intentions unclear, the farmer realized one thing: he couldn't trust anyone, not even the horse. The true question now was whether he would live long enough to discover the truth. The next morning, the farmer found himself unable to focus. The sight of the cloaked figures lingering near the woods, their presence like a shadow over his once quiet life, gnawed at him. He couldn't go back to sleep, couldn't shake the unease that gripped his chest. Something had shifted. The horse had changed everything, and now it seemed the world around him was shifting too. He needed answers. The first thing he did was go to the barn, but the horse was already gone. Panic surged through him. How could it have wandered off without him hearing a sound? He rushed outside, his heart pounding in his chest, and there it was, standing at the edge of the forest, just as it had been the night before, its body silhouetted against the dim light of dawn. It wasn't moving, just standing still, as if waiting for something or someone. The farmer approached cautiously, but before he could get too close, the horse turned and galloped off into the woods faster than he thought an animal could run. The old man's heart raced. Was it trying to tell him something? And if so, what was he supposed to do with this sudden sense of urgency? His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a car engine. He turned, his stomach tightening as the same sleek black car from the previous week appeared at the end of his long gravel driveway. The millionaire. What was he doing here again? The farmer's first instinct was to turn the other way, to retreat into his home and forget this whole nightmare, but something made him stay. Maybe it was the way the millionaire had looked at him last time, that sense of entitlement and control. Or maybe it was the nagging feeling that the answers he sought were right in front of him, if only he would ask the right questions. The millionaire's smile was as cold and practiced as ever. "I see the horse is settling in well," he said, his voice smooth like silk. "I trust you've had no trouble with it." The farmer stood firm, his eyes narrowing. "What do you want from me?" The millionaire's smile never faltered, but there was something else in his eyes, now something sharp. "I believe you have something that belongs to me." The words hung in the air like a threat, but the farmer didn't back down. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, his voice low but steady. The millionaire stepped closer, his gaze intense. "You don't understand, do you? That horse. It's not just a horse. It was never meant for you. And now, you've put yourself in a situation you'll never be able to walk away from." The farmer took a step back, his mind racing. What did the millionaire mean by that? How could an animal, something as simple as a horse, be worth this kind of obsession? And why was the millionaire so desperate to get it back? Before he could respond, the millionaire turned and walked back to his car, a final, dismissive gesture before he drove away without another word. The tension in the air lingered long after the sound of the engine had faded into the distance. The farmer stood there for a long moment, trying to make sense of it all. But the more he thought about it, the less it made sense. The only thing that was clear now was that the horse was at the center of something much bigger than he had ever imagined. He had seen that something was wrong, felt it in his gut, but the questions were multiplying faster than he could answer them. What was this horse really capable of? What power did it possess? And why was the millionaire so insistent on reclaiming it? As he stood there, pondering the mysteries, the sound of hooves echoed in the distance. He turned quickly, his heart skipping a beat. The horse was back, but this time it wasn't alone. There were more figures now, figures cloaked in the same shadowy black, their eyes gleaming with an intensity that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. They were coming closer, and the farmer realized with a shock that they were coming for him. What had he gotten himself into? And more importantly, would he survive long enough to uncover the truth? The cloaked figures moved like shadows, their presence growing heavier with each step they took toward the farmer. His pulse quickened, and every instinct in his body screamed for him to run. But there was nowhere to hide. The field stretched out like an endless sea, but the figures had him surrounded. The horse, still standing by the edge of the woods, seemed to watch him with those same piercing eyes, unblinking, as if it knew something he didn't. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The farmer's heart raced in his chest as the figures closed in, their footsteps barely making a sound on the dirt. He tried to speak, to ask them who they were and what they wanted, but the words caught in his throat. He could feel the tension, thick and suffocating, hanging in the air like a storm about to break. One of the figures, the tallest of the group, finally stepped forward. The hood of its cloak was low, obscuring its face, but there was something unnerving about the way it moved smooth, deliberate, like it had all the time in the world. It raised a hand slowly, and the farmer's breath caught in his throat. "You've made a mistake, old man." The figure's voice was deep, like gravel scraping against stone. "The horse you hold is not yours to keep." The farmer took a step back, his mind racing to make sense of the situation. What did they mean? The horse wasn't just a horse? But then, he already knew that. Something was wrong. The land had changed since it arrived, the crops had flourished, and the earth seemed alive in ways he couldn't explain. Was it connected to these mysterious figures? Or to the millionaire? "Who are you?" The words came out rough, almost pleading. "What do you want with me?" The figure didn't answer immediately. Instead, it gestured to the horse, still standing in the distance, its head held high and its gaze unblinking. The farmer's eyes followed the motion, and the answer hit him like a cold wave. This wasn't just about land, or money, or even power. This was about something far bigger, something the horse held, something the farmer had yet to understand. "There are forces at play here that you cannot begin to comprehend," the figure continued, its voice lowering as if sharing a dangerous secret. "The horse you've claimed is ancient. It carries with it a legacy that belongs to a far older world than your own. You are not the first to seek it, and you won't be the last." The farmer's thoughts whirled, and for a moment he felt the ground shift beneath his feet. Ancient? Legacy? Was this why the millionaire had been so desperate to reclaim the horse? What was it really capable of? His gaze darted back to the cloaked figures, then to the horse, standing there as though it were waiting for something. Or someone. The tension between them was palpable, and the air felt charged, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Before he could speak again, the tall figure took another step forward, its hand reaching out as if to touch the air between them. And just like that, everything changed. The ground trembled beneath the farmer's feet, just a slight shift at first, but enough to make him stumble. Then, the wind kicked up, whipping through the trees, its howling sound drowning out the farmer's racing thoughts. The horse reared up suddenly, its powerful form soaring through the air with a grace that took the farmer's breath away. But it wasn't the horse that grabbed his attention. It was what it was carrying, a strange, glowing stone embedded in its chest, glowing with an eerie light that seemed to pulse in time with the farmer's own heartbeat. He didn't understand it, but he knew one thing. This wasn't just about land or money anymore. This was something far more dangerous. As the figures closed in, the air thick with unspoken threats, the farmer had only one choice left, to either fight for the truth or surrender to whatever dark forces had come for him. And as he took a shaky step forward, ready to confront whatever waited ahead, a shadow fell over him. A figure, cloaked in the same darkness, stood behind him. "Do you really think you can control it?" The voice was low, a whisper against the wind. "Or will you become another pawn in a game you cannot win?" The farmer's heart pounded in his chest as the shadow behind him seemed to grow darker, pressing in on him. His mind raced with 1,000 questions, but there was no time to ask them. The cloaked figure, standing just out of reach, was watching him with cold, calculating eyes. Every instinct in his body screamed to run, but where could he go? The figures surrounded him like a cage. He turned slowly, the eerie glow from the stone in the horse's chest casting a sickly light over the figures before him. Their faces, hidden beneath hoods, remained an impenetrable mystery. The air was thick with tension, and for a moment it felt like the earth itself had gone still. The only sound was the wind howling through the trees and stirring the dust at his feet. "You still don't understand, do you?" The figure behind him said, its voice a low rasp. "This is bigger than just you and your farm. The horse. It's part of something that's been hidden for centuries. You're not just standing in the way of people wanting to control it. You're standing in the way of a legacy that could change everything." The farmer's breath caught in his throat. He thought he'd been chasing answers, but now it seemed like the answers were chasing him, like something he couldn't escape was closing in. A sudden realization hit him like a bolt of lightning. What if it wasn't just the millionaire who wanted the horse? What if the figures, the ones cloaked in mystery, were part of something much larger? Just as he opened his mouth to ask another question, the earth beneath him gave a violent tremor. His legs buckled, and he barely caught himself before hitting the ground. The other figures moved, their pace quickening as they reached the horse, their attention no longer on him. The horse, its eyes wide with a strange intelligence, pawed the ground restlessly. It was as if it, too, sensed the rising tension. The glowing stone in its chest pulsed more intensely now, and for the first time, the farmer noticed something he had missed before. The stone wasn't just glowing, it was shifting, like it was alive. And then, a deafening crack split the air, so loud it felt like the heavens themselves had opened. The ground seemed to split open before him, and a blinding light poured from the stone. The figures froze, their eyes widening in shock. It was too late. Something was awakening, something ancient and terrifying. The horse's body arched as if it were caught in the throes of some unseen force. The light from the stone intensified, and suddenly, it wasn't just the horse that glowed, it was the entire field. The earth hummed with a strange energy, and the farmer could feel it deep in his bones. His hands trembled as he tried to understand what was happening, but before he could make sense of it, the ground beneath him split open wider, the sound of cracking earth deafening in his ears. From the cracks, something stirred. Something far older and far more powerful than he could ever imagine. The cloaked figures didn't move, their eyes fixed on the chaos unfolding around them, but they didn't seem surprised. They knew this was coming. The horse had been the key, the trigger for something far more dangerous than anyone had anticipated. As the light from the stone became blinding, the figure stepped back, retreating toward the edge of the woods. The farmer didn't understand what was happening, but it didn't matter. The ground trembled once again, and then, as quickly as it had started. The figures were gone. The stone's light had faded, and the horse, once again standing still, no longer glowed. But the farmer knew this wasn't over. What had been awakened in those final moments, whatever that force was still out there, waiting. A new danger was approaching. And now, with the stone gone, the farmer was left with no answers, just questions. Who were the figures? Why had they left him alive? And more importantly, what had the stone unleashed? The answers were slipping further away with every passing second, and the only thing he knew for sure was that his life was no longer his own. He was part of something much larger than he could have ever imagined. The horse, too, seemed to know this. It watched him with those unblinking eyes, as if waiting for him to take the next step. The stakes had changed, and the mystery deepened. What had the farmer just set into motion, and would he live long enough to see it through? The silence in the air was suffocating, thick with the weight of the unknown. The farmer stood still, his hands trembling at his sides, staring at the empty space where the cloaked figures had once stood. The earth, once vibrating with energy, was now eerily calm, but the unsettling feeling in his gut refused to subside. He knew that whatever had just happened wasn't over. In fact, it had only just begun. He turned to the horse, its once glowing chest now dim, but still carrying that strange, quiet power. It stood motionless, eyes locked on him with a piercing gaze. As he approached, the air felt heavier, as though something ancient and unseen was watching him, waiting for him to act. The horse's presence felt like more than just an animal. It felt like an agent of fate, pulling him towards something beyond his comprehension. The farmer reached out, his fingers brushing the smooth surface of the glowing stone embedded in the horse's chest. A shock of energy surged through his body, and for a moment, the world around him blurred. He gasped, barely holding onto his balance as the light from the stone flared once more, brighter than ever before. His heart raced, his mind screaming at him to pull away, but he couldn't. There was something about the stone, something pulling him deeper into its pull. The feeling was familiar, yet terrifying. Suddenly, the stone seemed to pulse with life, and everything changed. A low rumble reverberated through the ground. The field around him darkened, as though the very air itself was being sucked into some unseen void. His breath caught in his throat as shadows began to twist and coil at the edges of the field, stretching toward him like the fingers of a dark hand reaching out to claim him. And then, just when he thought he couldn't take any more, the ground split open again, wider this time, as if the earth itself was protesting what was about to happen. From within the cracks, something dark and massive began to rise. The shape was indistinct at first, but then it became clearer, an enormous, otherworldly figure towering over him, eyes glowing with an ancient fire. It was like nothing he had ever seen before. Its form was monstrous, shifting, as if made of smoke and shadow, with glowing eyes that seemed to pierce through his very soul. The farmer stumbled back, his mind unable to comprehend the scale of what he was witnessing. This wasn't just some ancient force, it was something more, something he had unwittingly unleashed with his actions. The stone, the horse, it had all led to this moment, to the awakening of this creature from the depths of time. The horse stepped forward, as though it were leading the way, its hooves striking the ground with a reverberating sound that shook the air. The farmer watched in a mix of awe and terror as the creature seemed to bend and shift, its glowing eyes locking onto the horse with a strange, almost reverent gaze. And then, just as the farmer was about to speak, the unexpected happened. The creature, this ancient being, did not attack. It paused, as if waiting for something or someone. The horse, with a calmness the farmer could not understand, bowed its head slightly, as though acknowledging the creature. The ground trembled one last time, and then everything stopped. The air grew still, and the light from the stone faded into nothingness. The massive figure before him melted back into the shadows, disappearing as suddenly as it had appeared. The earth settled, the strange energy dissipated, and all that remained was the quiet, peaceful farm, as if nothing had ever happened. But the farmer knew better. The stone in the horse's chest was still there, and its power still lingered in the air. He had felt it, deep within him. The creature had not been destroyed, it had only retreated. And now, with a sense of dread creeping into his bones, he realized the truth. This was far from over. In the distance, the shadowy figures began to reappear, emerging from the trees. They were coming back, not as enemies, but as allies. The farmer's heart pounded in his chest as one of them stepped forward, its voice softer now, more deliberate. "You've seen it now," the figure said, "and now you must choose. Will you be the one to control it, or will you let it destroy everything?" The farmer could only stare, his mind reeling. He had wanted answers. Now, he had them, but they only led to more questions, and the choices he faced were darker than he could have ever imagined. And just as he thought he could bear no more, the ground beneath him trembled again, and the horse's eyes glowed brightly. The stone was awakening once more. What was happening next? What would he do? The answers were slipping further away with every passing second, but the clock was ticking. And in that moment, The farmer knew one thing for certain. His life and the fate of everything around him was about to change forever. The farmer stood frozen, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The horse's glowing eyes were locked on him, and the power of the stone surged again, echoing through the air. The cloaked figures, now surrounding him, were silent, watching him intently, waiting for him to make a decision. His mind raced. The truth had become clear. He wasn't just a simple farmer anymore. His life had been forever altered by the mysterious force that lay within the horse. The stone, the ancient power it held, was more than just an artifact. It was a key to something far bigger, something the world had been trying to control for centuries. And now the choice lay with him. Would he be the one to control it, to harness the energy within the stone, or would he allow it to slip beyond his grasp and bring destruction to everything he held dear? The cloaked figure who had spoken stepped forward, its voice calm but filled with an undeniable urgency. You must decide. The power you've awakened is not meant for just anyone. But you— It paused, considering its next words. You have the heart of a true leader. You could change the world. The farmer's eyes flicked to the horse, which seemed to nod as if urging him to take the next step. The weight of its gaze sent a chill down his spine. He had no idea what kind of world he'd be stepping into, but he knew one thing: he couldn't go back. Not now. Not after everything he had seen. The truth was too heavy, too far-reaching to ignore. The stone pulsed again, and he reached out. As soon as his fingers touched the cool surface of the stone, a surge of energy shot through him, filling him with an overwhelming sense of clarity. The stone had chosen him. It wasn't just an object of power, it was alive, and it had a purpose. It was a bridge between worlds, and the horse was its guardian. In that moment, the figures around him stepped back, their faces betraying no emotion. They didn't need to speak. The farmer had made his choice. He could feel the power now, coursing through his veins, a force older than time itself. It was up to him how to use it. As the light from the stone dimmed, a new silence settled over the land. The energy that had once felt chaotic and unpredictable now seemed peaceful, contained. The horse, once an enigma, now stood by his side, no longer just a creature but a partner in this newfound journey. The cloaked figures slowly began to fade into the shadows, their role in his story complete. They had led him here, and now it was his turn to take control of his destiny. The farmer turned to look at his land, the vast fields stretching out before him. It was still the place he had always known, but it was no longer the only place he belonged. The power within him had unlocked something more, something beyond the borders of his farm, and with it came the responsibility to protect it, to ensure that the ancient force was never again used for harm. The sky began to lighten as dawn approached, casting a soft glow over the earth. The farmer, now a man transformed, felt a sense of peace he had never known before. The journey ahead would be long and filled with challenges, but he was no longer alone. With the horse by his side and the power of the stone coursing through him, he was ready. In the end, the choice had been his, and the path forward was clearer than ever. He had embraced his destiny, and now he was ready to face whatever came next. As the sun rose higher, the farmer knew one thing for certain: this was only the beginning. The world was waiting, and he would be ready to meet it head-on, for he had finally found his place in it.